Hi, everyone. This is Raquel.
Hi, and this is Jennifer.
Welcome to Madness Cafe.
This is a feminist podcast where we talk about women's issues, politics, and health and wellness.
And where those issues intersect. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Madness Cafe. Today, our guest is Lynn Harris. And let me tell you a little bit about Lynn. Lynn is a culture-shifting producer, award-winning journalist, and author and co-author of 6 books, whose comedy and campaigns for social justice and gender equity have changed laws and conversations from Capitol Hill to NASCAR. It's a very wide range. She is a founder and CEO of Gold Comedy, the comedy school, professional network, and content studio where women and non-binary folks grow their comedy careers, build powerful communities, and make funny stuff. Harris co-created Breakup Girl, which was acquired by Oxygen, which is one of the first multi-platform internet success stories, and served as the first VP of communications at global human rights group Breakthrough, where her blend of humor and advocacy powered some of the team's most effective US campaigns. And fun fact, she has also worked as a Tanya Harding lookalike, which is a long story, which I'm sure hopefully we will hear about. And I have to say, you're much prettier than Tanya Harding. But anyway, Lynn Harris, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, but I also want to say I'm a huge Tanya Harding fan, so
Awesome.
I just want to, I was always very. I didn't have the reaction that a lot of people thought I would to being compared to her. Let's put it that way.
Gotcha. That's fair.
Well, now I just want to dig into that. I want to scrap these questions. And let's hear about Tanya Harding.
You want to? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So it's totally like there is a through line here, actually. So it's a feminist anecdote.
Perfect.
Or at least I tried to make it into one. Many years ago, when the whole Tanya and Nancy thing was happening, right? And before the Olympics in Lillehammer, I was living in Boston, which is my hometown, and is also Nancy country. And fun fact, I went on to play hockey, but at the time I was still I was a figure skater.
Wow.
And which is why I followed her. Like I had followed her for years and knew that she had exceptional talent, but not in the same, style as other skaters. And I had blonde hair. For those of you listening, not watching, I do not have blonde hair. I have a different color hair that is also not my natural hair color, but at the time I was blonde. Now it's red. In any case, so I would be walking around Boston, literally carrying my ice skates, and people would slow down and roll down the window of their car and say, "Hey, Tanya, go home." And I'd be like, "What is happening?"
Wow.
And they knew I wasn't her, but I looked enough like her. Like I really did just happen to look like her. I have pictures from the time where people are like, or I'll be like, "Which one's me?" And they'll be like, "I don't know." So it kind of evolved very quickly over, like pretty much overnight, because if you think about it, back in 94, before we had 1 bazillion media platforms and 1 bazillion platforms, conversations, news sources, there was one. Like we talked about, like one story at a time. And it was OJ or it was Tanya and like it. And so suddenly, like, the whole world was kind of, finding itself out of news on a given day, was focused on, and there's someone in Boston who looks like Tanya. And it turned into a whole circus with newspapers, television, radio stations for a lookalike. And I wound up on a lot of talk shows, including Ricky Lake and Geraldo. I won a contest. And the whole time, though, I was kind of, and I wanted to, like, I was sort of involved in comedy. So I wanted to, like, I wanted to say yes. I had aspirations, but I also was involved in feminism. And I was like, this feels bad.
Literally.
Not all the time. Not all the
This is
time.
problematic.
This is problematic. And like, not all of it was, to be clear, like not all of it. If it was just like a regular radio conversation or whatever, then I could say, you know what, I really like Tanya, and it's random that I look like her, but whatever. Like, so I'd have the, and you know, and sometimes I get very soapboxy and be like, well, if you're comparing me to a young woman who came from a broken home, whose mother saved bottle caps to pay for her ice time, and she went on to learn to skate at the mall and then become one of the most athletic original figure skaters of our time, then I don't mind at all being compared to Tanya Harding. And it was also like legit, like in the right venue, an opportunity just to like actually, and you know, again, I was only like 22, but I did women's studies, and you know, it was an opportunity to say like, to really interrogate, you know, why are we calling and again, setting aside like literally who did what, like I actually do have a theory about the actual attack.
Mhm.
But setting aside that, the stereotypes that people like went to immediately and automatically were very, you know, anti-feminist and very binary in terms of what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a female skater, you know, and Nancy was the princess and Tanya was like the kind, like the
Harlot.
thug, you know, and like it was so like Madonna whore situation on ice,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
and so like I made some poor choices and I didn't always articulate what I actually felt. It was complicated, but then I was leading up to something, but so yeah, it was partly like I can't believe I did some of the things I did, but also partly like I actually did have the chance in some cases
Wow.
to say like, let's think about what we're talking about here, like even as I was like wearing ice skates on Geraldo. So you know, so I was not a saint, but I tried. So
Well, you're
yeah.
human and you were 22, so it's
Right.
okay.
Right. So that's I did say it was a long story in my bio. So let me just tell you that that's part of the story.
Wow.
Fair
That's
enough.
a pretty interesting story.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing it with us.
Yeah, thank you.
So on your website, you said, what gets me out of bed and keeps me up at night, using the power of comedy and pop culture to shift perceptions and promote equality. Tell us about that statement and about you.
Yeah, I mean that's a perfect segue, right? Because there was the thing that was happening in pop culture at that time, and I promise you, I'm not going to talk about Tanya Harding for the next hour.
It's
But,
okay.
Yeah, you can if you want. That's totally cool. We can
Um,
find a way to tie her in. It's good.
I mean, I'd be happy to. Again, I love her, but you know, that was the biggest thing for those 5 minutes. That was the biggest thing happening in pop culture, right? And so it was once, to answer your question, it was both a moment that showed us where we were at culturally, how we felt about women, and what we believed about the rigid roles, the few and rigid roles that women could play. But then, you know, I was also handed this bizarre gift of, and again, I was not perfect at it, of being able to kind of to question it, to also say, to become a part of the same pop culture conversation and say, hold up, what are we actually saying here? And so that was a microcosm back then, or I should say an early, you know, whatever, an early example of the ways that pop culture both enshrines where we're at as a culture, but also can be used to push forward where we're at as a culture. And it's harder, it's much harder now in 2025 to say pop culture as it is, like as if it's one thing, because you know, in wonderful ways and for wonderful reasons, we have so many more platforms and channels and places and, you know, places and spaces. But still, like back then, it mattered when Ellen came out. Like, was it like nuanced? You know, was it the most nuanced conversation about like, was it a conversation about actual justice necessarily? No. But did it matter that a major, like, accessible white, like, and I say white because, you know, that was part of her being, you know, not alarming to other white people. It mattered that she came out on this major show on a major network, and things, choices and conversations like that continue to matter, even though they're more splintered. But now we also have more places to talk about them, which is also good. We don't wind up with one opinion or one decision about why, one sort of collective decision about, what, the female friendships on White Lotus or whatever it is. There's a lot of conversation and it gets interesting.
Right.
So I like to be part of that. To go back to answering your question, I love pop culture. I love TV. I love whatever. I love I love comedy, and I care about how we can use it for good.
And I'm glad that you ended with that sentence, using comedy for good, because I'd really like to talk about how the school that you started, Gold's Comedy School, how that can basically, why that's important. Like, why do we need a school to teach women, and, as you say, others about, comedy and finding their voice, and, why, just basically, why is it important? Why do we need women in comedy?
So what's super fun is that we are, first of all, yes, a comedy school, and also a professional network where people, our members, can collaborate with each other, find mentors, find connections, find gigs, find the sort of network that, like, the old white men before us had, and the young white men, to advance their careers. And we also make content. So we have a web series that's now on Fox Soul, which is sort of a streaming subsidiary of Fox. So, like, we're also putting content out that our members have made. And
Nice.
what's the reason? It's important for the individuals, and it's important in the aggregate. It's important for the individuals because, comedy is hard for everyone. Comedy is hard for the straightest, whitest dude, right? It's just hard. It's harder for people who are outside the comedy norm. It's changing. It's better. Women can be Ghostbusters now. Like, it's way better than when I did stand up. But it needs a lot more. Like, I was literally looking at the website for a local club today with a friend who was looking for a place to go see a show, and all of the shows, they have shows like every hour and a half. Tonight, it's a well-known club. Every single one had one woman on it. Today.
Wow.
In New York City.
Wow.
I mean today, like today, and I also mean today, gesturing broadly,
Yeah.
And so anyway, so that matters for the individuals. And we don't do just stand up, but that's just an example from today. So so it matters for individuals because comedy is work and women are people, and it's opportunity, it's money, it's advancing your career like you want to advance your career in any place. And it matters in the aggregate because we want to make it easier for the other voices to get out there, for the other voices, the other faces, the other perspectives, which again, it is changing. I mean, even when I was growing up, like, of course, I don't mean to, like, undercut my own argument, but, like, there was even a lot of sort of interesting boundary pushing comedy in the 70s when I was growing up. Billy Crystal was a gay guy on Soap, and there was, so this is not like this is not suddenly changing in the last 3 years. It's just, it is changing, but just slowly. Anyway, so in the aggregate, as I like to say, when you make people laugh, you make people listen. So
Absolutely.
comedy is in that way power, right? And
Right.
so if whether we're putting women and others in charge, whether we're putting more of them on stage, whether we're putting more of them in leadership positions to make decisions about what content gets made and how it gets made, whether we're putting more women and others in writers' rooms, when you see, whoever's telling jokes has the power, right? And so being the one telling jokes or the one running the room or whatever, you have authority. So the more new and different and heretofore marginalized faces and voices we put in those places, and here's where I get grandiose, we're changing the face of comedy, and then that's my angle on changing the face of power.
I love it.
Like, the more dudes who see, like the more dudes who just go to a show that's like mostly women, but nobody makes a big deal.
Mhm.
It's not ladies' night.
Mhm.
Some
It's
21-year-old
just
dudes who
this
are seeing that
person's funny.
it's just comedy, and so like that matters.
Mhm.
It
And
does
so
matter.
we're just trying to like little by little by little, and again, it matters because like those women got hired and they're getting paid to do comedy, and they,
Right.
nobody told them, oh sorry, we already have a woman on the lineup tonight, which is very common. And
Is
so that's what I mean by in the aggregate. We want to like, that's not what I tell people. That's like not why I tell people they should like pay money to join Gold. Like
Mhm.
why they should pay money to join Gold is we can support them in their comedy careers and side hustles. Like, and
Right.
we're all with no bro vibe. Like that's the thing. I can't police, we say we're for women and non-binary creators and others, but like I, your gender is whatever you tell me it is. So
Yeah.
like I can't control for that legally or actually, but what I can do is make sure that we have no bro vibe. And so that already makes it easier for people to succeed. And then we add skills, and then we add mentoring, and then we add connections, and then we add possible gigs. And so that's why an individual would want to join. And that's it. But then in the kind of like big picture, like, but why is the other stuff?
There's a quote on Gold's website, Lynn, that I really think fits right here. And you say on there, but the even bigger point here is that getting funnier doesn't just change how you feel about yourself, it changes the way people feel about you. Because when you make people laugh, you make people listen. And when people listen to women, the world will be a better and funnier place.
There you go. Couldn't have said it better myself. Oh wait, I did say that. But yeah, that's why. And I'm glad you said that because I do. I always I always sort of jump at the chance to build on to when people say, not you guys, but when people say, oh, well, that's wonderful because comedy builds confidence, which it does. Or that's wonderful because I wonder if like the women you teach will now speak up more at work, which they do. But my point is, even if they're not in, we have a lot of women who are like working on pilots, but also have like another job, like a head of a nonprofit or like
Mhm.
who are kind of by day by night, like professionals in both. But I do like to think about it. It's not like my whole thing is like women don't need to learn to be louder. People need to learn to be quieter when we're talking. That's the other piece of this. Like, of course, like all the studies, like we know this. Of course, comedy is great for you and you and you and you. It's like there's 1 zillion studies about how it, helps people, certainly write faster, think sharper, read a room, builds confidence, builds connection. We know that CEOs like to hire people with a sense of humor. We know that people like their managers have a sense of humor. We know that women, heretofore have not been encouraged to be loud. You guys talk about being loud, so like all of those individual things are true and I would never undermine them. But I just want to say that it's not about like, it's not about like individual growth within the existing patriarchy. It's about like, no, we're trying to actually shut that down.
Nice.
Yeah, I will
Nice.
clap for that.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
thanks.
Yes.
I have a couple questions. So you talked about women in comedy sometimes being told, "Oh, we've already got the token woman for tonight." Is that comedy's traditional DEI initiative? And what is this bro vibe you talk about?
Okay.
This bro vibe.
Yes. Yeah. Again, it's gotten better. Like, in fact, to the point where I was like really shocked to see that it was that bad on the lineups of this one club tonight in New York, because it has gotten better. But like, yeah, it's typically, many exceptions. Typically, like people still think of a comic as a dude, generally a white dude, and everyone else is a female comic or an Asian comic or a black comic. Or again, I am way oversimplifying, and this is way changing. But so the point is, if you got a bunch of white dudes on your
Not
lineup,
quickly enough.
no, but I just want to give credit where credit is due, because there are a lot of people who have before me who have worked to make these kind of changes and are standing for these kind of changes. And I don't want to be like, this is my
Of
idea,
course.
but there still is this idea that if you've got a woman on the lineup, you're good. But that's not different from, it's the same as these panels. You
Mhm.
know,
Yes.
it's the
Mhm.
same as, it's the same as any C-suite. It's the same. So like my angle is
Yep.
comedy, but like, we're not that special. And so, in terms of, we're not that different, I should say, from other, we just work later at night, I guess. But like, yeah, there has been a notion that like, well,
We
if you
got
got
the
an Asian
woman.
guy, you're okay. If you got some, hey, I got
Yeah,
someone
check
brown, we're
check
good.
check that box. Yeah.
Right. And so I think what needs to happen is, honestly, and I'm not naming names because I honestly don't remember who they were, but like every dude, and again, they've got to work too. Like, so I should, this is sort of ideal, not, and I realize there are constraints and limitations on what I'm about to say that are perfectly reasonable. But like, I kind of want to live in a world where like all the dudes on those lineups who maybe again didn't even know who else is on the show would be like, I'm not gonna do that unless it's more balanced. The
Mhm.
way that we
Mhm.
call upon white dudes to be like, I'm not gonna do your panel,
Yep.
unless they're, we
I'm
call
gonna
on them all the
clap
time to do
again.
that.
I'm gonna
Mhm.
Again,
clap
it is a little unfair and unrealistic of me to say that. I want to be clear around the edges because they got to work. They don't always know. They just get told they have a
Yeah,
9-10 slot. And so
but
I don't want
it
to
it
defend them.
it
I'm
used to
just
be unfair in, on panels, like in, academic spaces or business spaces. Okay, the change can be made in comic spaces too.
And I think the point is, men, we need you to say something.
Yeah,
We
right.
speak
need
the
It's like
fuck
we're
you.
up.
tired.
We
Yeah.
need you on our side.
Yeah, speak the fuck up.
We need you
Yeah.
having our back. That's
Mhm.
it. That's it. It's
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
Yeah.
we want your help.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot I can say about that. But yeah, so that's, again, it's changing, but we need kind of well, here's something else I can say about that. Why do I feel like I just heard of a really good example of this just happening? Well, one of my favorite comics, Cameron Esposito, made the point years ago in an essay that she wrote for I don't remember where, but it was her. And her point was that, like, my God, with all of these, with a lineup of almost all straight white dudes, it does them a disservice
Mhm.
because none of them stands out.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
and they all just kind of start to let's face it, blur together, even if
Yeah.
they're good. And like, again, my other
They're just
disclaimer
not
is like,
attractive anymore because they all look the same.
they don't seem original, and so I know. And like, some of my best friends, the funniest guys are straight white dudes. Like there's nothing, there's no, it's no shade to any individual comic. It's just, her point was that they're missing an opportunity themselves. And so is the
To stand
booker
out.
for them to stand out. And I swear to God, this just happened where I can't, I'll remember this like the minute we stop, but like someone was, it's like this. It wasn't this, but it's like this. Someone like telling me about a show they went to who couldn't remember any of the white dudes, even though she said they were funny. She liked them.
Mhm.
She said they were, but she did remember like the one Asian guy or whatever it was, or the one non-binary person, or the one trans person, whatever it was. And I was like, yep, it's a blur, and it's so they shouldn't do it just to be chivalrous or to be feminist, which yes, but also like that, like they could be like, this lineup is not great. There's not a
Yeah.
lot of, the other disclaimer is that, like, of course, not all white dudes talk about the same thing. Like, of course they don't, and not all white dudes are as white as we think they are, and et cetera, et cetera. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. But
Sure.
broadly speaking, there's a lot of invisible diversity. We know this, but broadly speaking, yeah, yeah, that this is, you're asking about, is this comedy's DEI? Well, it needs to be. And because I think I would love to live in a world where, like, the default, the default lineups at a given good club on a particular night are fairly diverse. And then we can also have, if we want to, like, Gold has done shows that are like all people who are neurodivergent, or our Pride shows obviously are all people who are queer, and we could also do those because that does provide a theme and a perspective, but it doesn't mean that they're not on the other shows.
Right.
It doesn't mean they have
Right.
to wait for their special month.
Right. Right.
Exactly. That just a general show is going to have variety of not just jokes, but the people telling the jokes and those people's backgrounds, because hopefully the people going to the shows, there's also variety there. So,
Yeah. It seems like obvious. It just seems like sort of bad business, to me, like to not
mhm,
have, I don't know. I don't know. I shouldn't, again, I don't know how they run their business. I know that they're booking people who they know bring people, but then there's a longer term play for a club to be like, well, okay, what if I just keep putting on up and comers in such a way that I help them build their following, and then they come to my club and pay for my drinks.
Yep, yep.
Easy for me to say, but and it's not just stand up, obviously. It's who's in the writers' room. It's who's running the writers' rooms are changing a lot for the better. We have a class, we have a premium class that teaches you how to develop a an industry ready, industry standard pitch for your idea.
oh,
Generally,
wow.
people do TV shows, but there's also like unscripted, there's film, there's podcasts. But generally, like either a half-hour comedy or like an hour dramedy kind of thing is what people are pitching. And that's another way to the mission of the person that we are very lucky to have teaching that class. Her name is Ryan Cunningham. Is adjacent to is the same as what we've been talking about. To not all the people in that class are experienced in something. They're
Mhm,
not doing it on a lark. Some of them have experience with writing pilots and, sort of in the TV world or stand up world. And some people have, are accomplished in other areas, but they have this story that they want to tell, a story that, as she would put it, is on their hearts to tell. Those stories, obviously, or not obviously, but those stories often, by definition, wind up being exceedingly diverse is the wrong word, but like exceedingly original, stories we haven't heard. And her theory of change is that, it's we're not suffering from a lack of ideas or a lack of talent. We're suffering from bad pitches. Like, you got to know how to
yeah.
pitch. Like, it's like you just got to know how to do it. And so that's her secret, like her secret formula is, well, just teach them how to pitch. Then we can open more doors for
Mm.
more stories and more perspectives, even from people who are not already part of, Hollywood.
Mhm.
Yeah, makes total sense. How do you bring tough topics into the humor situation when we're talking about politics, women's rights, what's going on right now in our country? How do you bring that in?
That I love this question. There's kind of two columns of what we might call tough topics. One of them is the stuff that's happening out there in the world that is absolutely not funny. And then there's the stuff that might have happened in your life that is absolutely not funny. That comics that talented comics who work really hard at it are able to use a comedy key to unlock. To address the first one, which is like, let's talk about, how do you make current events funny, which I mean are just the worst nightmares a lot of us have known, right? Um, well, no, I shouldn't put it that way, because here's another nightmare. I was doing stand up during September 11th, not
Mm.
Mm,
that minute, but like that was my stand up era, and it took everyone a long time to it took sort of the industry, a long time. We were quiet for a long time because there was no point in making any jokes, and then the Onion kind of roared back with jokes that, to answer your question, the Onion was the first, like, to come to, like, the Onion kind of gave the rest of us permission to start tiptoeing back and finding the humor. And I forget exactly how long it was after the attacks, but what they did was create a whole issue that, of course, did not make fun of the attacks, but made fun of our response, our kind of absolutely floored, flabbergasted, paralyzed response. A great example of which was the headline, and something like this: not knowing what else to do, Ohio woman bakes flag cake. Which is very sweet. And it's funny because she was like, like, I mean, I'm not even in New York, but I'm so touched, I'm so affected by this. I am nowhere near it, but I got to do something. I'm going to make a flag cake. So it was very funny. And it was funny because it was making fun of us, not it.
Mhm.
So that's number one. Number two, we do have a class called Comedy About Trauma, which is taught by
Oh,
superb
wow.
comedian named Carolyn Castilla. And, the people in the class certainly talk about trauma, but they also talk about just like bad things that have happened that may or may not fit the definition of trauma, but are not funny. And people, it's kind of a similar thing where Carolyn is able to have them figure out and articulate, what's funny about something tragic, what's funny about something difficult. And again, it's not necessarily that domestic violence or bipolar disorder are funny on their face, because they're not. But in the right hands, and when you know that the person who is telling the jokes has gotten to the point where they're able to tell the jokes, then you can kind of relax and hear the universal themes while they're being super specific about like I just went to Three Goldies just did a sort of a 3-night run of solo shows that they developed in that class, and one was about living with bipolar disorder, one was about being in an abusive relationship, and one was about growing up queer in a non-queer friendly place. And they've all like had time so they were able to make fun of their own reactions to like they were able to make fun of their own bad choices, without, again, not without making it like my fault, but with, they were able to find, and then in the specificity, find the universality of the things that challenge them. And yeah, I mean, it was really beautiful. And I mean, they all had people. I was able to go to the first one, but I know they all had people howling. And there is a reason that this kind of works, which is it's not actually cognitive behavioral it's not actually cognitive behavioral therapy, but I did have a cognitive behavioral therapist create an analogy for me where she said, what I see going on is that when you're able to hold a difficult topic at arm's length and able to kind of turn it around like a rock
Mhm.
that you're looking
Mhm.
at to see or a shell, you can find a different way in. And also you're holding it you're holding it at arm's length. It's not in you, it's something that you have in your life.
Right.
And so it's not easy to do, but it's very it's very, I don't want to say cathartic, because the person who's done this has sort of already catharted, like you again, like they have to they have to have a certain distance from it in order to be successful in this endeavor. But it is very that's one of the reasons that comedy can create connection, because
Mhm.
even if you've never experienced anything like what that person has gone through, there's in their specificity you can find something relatable. Fear of being
Right.
alone, fear, all those things that we all have.
Right.
And then to be able to laugh together is very is creates a community and just empathy.
Right. Well, and I was just gonna say that when you because, in a bunch of the classes, there's the element of learning how to tell a story, whether it's your story or a joke or, whatever, there's that storytelling aspect that you're learning. And if you can learn to tell that story so that other people can hear it and
Mm-hmm.
not just react and get defensive, then you're creating a situation where A, somebody can learn, B, somebody can develop some empathy, and maybe actually, like you said, they can see the relatable parts to it
Yeah,
instead of just going, "Oh, that's too heavy for me. That's not my story. I don't want to hear that. That's going to be a downer. I gotta
yeah,
go." You
yeah,
know?
yeah. And it also, like, the key ingredient, also a key ingredient is coaching and having a teacher. Like you have also the teacher, you need to be kind of ready to dive in, right? And then you need to be and then someone to tell you, right? Someone to reflect back to you like, whoa, I think that's an overshare. Like that's not gonna land. Let's work on that a little bit more. Let's say, okay, what are you trying to say in that moment? Let's find a different way to say it, or whatever.
Right.
And having that experienced, I guess a mirror can't be experienced, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And Carolyn herself, who teaches that class, there are plenty of people who are good at this, but Carolyn herself has had a very successful one woman show that went to Edinburgh about like murder and abuse in her family, and how that, like, by the way, is hilarious because it's not about the murder, it's about the ripple effect in her family and on her, and the kind of like bananas way that she's dealt with it, but also the super strong way she's dealt with it. Yeah, so it can be done. It's tricky, but it can be done.
Tell us about, you're a co-founder of a comedy event series called Persisticon.
Yeah, we gotta get we gotta do another one. Yeah, this is just kind of in my goes to my like through line of just wanting to make change, and then like the stuff in my the tools in my in the arrows in my quiver have to do with comedy, So before the pandemic, a bunch of us who knew each other pretty well, but through different types of connections in my neighborhood here in Brooklyn, got together during, it was Trump 1.0. And we were like, this is exhausting. We got to do something that brings community together. And the woman who convened us, Diana Kane, I don't know if you've ever seen those t-shirts that say feminist in gold. That they're like iconic in our neighborhood because of her, and they've gone viral because like I gave one to Sam B, and then Sam B like made some herself, and they're huge anyway. So Diana has like an art perspective but also loves comedy, and so Diana was like, can we like do a thing that's like a community event with like community vendors and artists, but it's also a comedy show and it's also a fundraiser, particularly for electing candidates who support abortion? And we were like, yes, we can do that. Absolutely. And so that's a labor of love. We did 4 shows. We had to cancel one right before the pandemic, which if I remember correctly, Jill Sobule was booked for. Jill Sobule of blessed memory.
Yes. Oh,
we love and miss
so
her.
sad.
So sad. But so here's me bringing us down. So yeah, it really shows. Oh, we had like insane lineups at the time because like people, including the comedians, were just like, let's fucking go. Like we're like they were just, it was early Trump, and they were just like, what can I do? And we've had like Murray Hill and Bridget Everett from Somebody Somewhere, and we had Aparna Nancherla, we had Michelle Buteau now from Survival of the Thickest. We had
I
all these
love
people.
her so
Oh my
much.
God, she's the best.
Love
And they're all just
her.
nice people, who just want to help. So we'd always be able to get insane lineups and sell out the shows, and it was really fun. And then we kind of like, obviously the pandemic, we partnered with some organizations to do some cool virtual stuff. And with another organization called Two Night that also Jill Sobule came and serenaded us. I know
she was amazing.
But anyway, we just had breakfast the other day about like, what do we do now? And we're trying to figure it out because it's not as clear. Like we do need joy, but like and we do need community, and we do need art, and we need all those things. But we also are, we're kind of sitting at breakfast going, yes, 100% we need all those things because we also need to like fill our tanks, right? But at the same time, we kind of don't know what to do. Like, it's not, we're still trying to, and I think this is entirely fair that like we as a movement or as a constituency are still trying to figure out like, what's the Jenga piece we're going for? What's the or to put a positive way, like what's the, what Jenga piece will topple them, but also put another way, like, is it money? Like, is it like, if it's a fundraiser, what, is it just, do we raise money for like abortion access, which great, but that's, we all give money to that anyway. But but like, is that going to change or help? Like, are we helping or are we like, so we're just like, we don't know what it's so
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm.
so anyway, it's we're thinking. It's just the path is not as clear. Like it's not just what's the right call to action, because there's no one right call to action, but what's the call to action that people will say, like, yes, I will show up, that's what I need, you know.
Mhm.
And I think it's joy, but I don't think it's just joy.
Mhm.
People are, so, and I don't know what. Now I've like told you our whole breakfast basically. So so, but they'll, we're cooking up. We're cooking up something.
So it's
I'll let you
coming.
know.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Please keep us posted, because I mean, honestly, that's what we need. We need joy. I mean, I think that's part of the what's the word I'm looking for? People just get so exhausted and get so just paralyzed with, oh my God, the world is literally falling apart. What do I do? I'm just going to sit here under the blankets and, you know, put my head in the sand. But we can't live life that way. We need joy. And thankfully, you know, comedians comedians provide that, when we need it. So do you see that? I mean, because you brought up 9/11, you brought up the pandemic. Are people start and I know it's only 100 days in, it feels like 1,000 years, but
But
are
right,
are you
I know it feels like
seeing
it's like the 57th of May right now or
right,
something.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Are you seeing people starting to percolate yet about, okay, yeah, we're all tired already. It sucks. Yeah, here's something to laugh about, or here's something that's going to put a
Oh
smile on
yeah,
your face, or here's something that's going to remind you about the humanity in the world.
yeah. I mean, I think we still have that capacity when it's not like we're not dead yet. Like yeah, absolutely. And I think, I mean, if nothing else, I mean, two examples. If nothing else, like people still love a funny sign. People still love a funny sign,
They
Yeah,
do. They
yeah,
do.
and
Yep.
yeah.
I've been working on some. I haven't had a humdinger yet. I'm still working on it. But like funny sign is a funny sign. Funny signs really, I'm not being flip. Like they bring a lot of delight. Like delight.
Mhm.
And remind us that we still got it, basically, right? The other thing is, on the one hand, I think we all kind of feel like, even though we sort of know this is wrong, we all kind of feel like we should be doing nothing else but fighting the power. Like,
Mm,
how can I even fucking go to brunch? Like, this is
right.
crazy. I went the other night to such a good show at tiny little Union Hall in my neighborhood. We're so lucky to have it because a lot of comics like use it to like do tapings because it's tiny and sort of manageable, or to work out stuff. Like, so you see like someone super famous on a Monday, whatever. And by the way, it was on my late mom's birthday, and I didn't know that the theme of the show was as follows, because I saw that Bob the Drag Queen, who was one of my favorite comics, was going to be there, and I just bought the ticket. Like I didn't even look. Because I knew it was going to sell out. Bought the tickets that day. I was like, oh, it's a sad day for me, but I'm looking forward to seeing Bob the Drag Queen tonight. And I was like, I wonder who else is on. And I went to click on. I clicked on what the show was about, and the show was the Dead Moms Club.
Oh
It
my
was him.
gosh.
I mean, he was taping a special for Mother's Day with him and
Oh,
two other comics who were talking about, in a very funny way, to go back to your earlier question, Jennifer, about losing their moms. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is perfect. So my point is that, like, so we have to make room for joy, but we also have to make room for also just the other stuff that's going on that we need to process.
Yeah.
Um, because we're not made of wood.
Was
So
yeah.
the was the Dead Moms Club funny?
hilarious.
Yeah.
It was Bob, who is just an absolute genius, and two other comics, who Sydney Washington and Christy Cello, who had both lost their moms but had different takes on it, different ways to talk about it. And it was just like we were talking about with the other, comedy about traumas. It was that thing where they, had enough distance that we didn't feel like we were intruding on their process, but also, got at things that were very hard and raw. So yeah, it was fantastic. Like we just we laughed, we cried. Yeah, it was great.
So a perfect day for you. That's great.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
Was there anything you wanted to tell our audience that we didn't give you the opportunity to say?
I don't think so. We covered a lot. We covered a lot, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we're great. I think you asked great questions.
Well, thank you. And Lynn, I
Sure.
just have to say, I just think it's such a great thing what you and Gold Comedy are doing as far as you're helping to create a space where people can learn and have community and be mentored and learn their craft and all of these things that, like you said earlier, cis white guys just had because they had the boys clubs and all these things. They just had all this opportunity, but you and your team are creating opportunities for people to do just that, right? So to get the
Yeah.
mentoring and to learn and or just whether they're going to make a career out of it or not, you're creating opportunities for people to develop another skill and to become part of a community that maybe they wouldn't be part of before. So
Yeah.
I think serious, hats off to you and your team for that.
Thank
I think
you.
that's incredibly important work.
Thank you. And we do have a few, some cis, some not, some white, some not dudes milling about in the community. But the point is they also don't like the bro vibe in the rest of the community. Like they also don't like the kind of just like, you know, yucky open mics where no one's really paying attention, or barrages of sexist jokes, or homophobic joke, and
Mhm.
again, it's much better than it used to be. All of that is much less common, but like just the gatekeeping and just a place where like you can fail, you can be yourself, you can be a doofus, you can be like, and you don't have to worry about like, how am I coming across as a woman in comedy right now, or like
Right.
as a gay dude in comedy, or whatever it is, right? That's what I meant. You asked me before, Jennifer. That's what I meant about bro vibe. Like we're
Yeah,
nice.
good. I'm glad we're
We're
talking
just nice.
about bro vibe. It's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's why like we don't not attract some dudes who are also like, oh, this is a breath of fresh air. you know
Yeah.
Because it's hashtag not all men. Some of them are
yeah,
good.
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely.
That's my
So
favorite hashtag.
yeah, and super talented, like, so we have some super talented, yeah, super talented, who and also like it's not the worst thing for them, like it's not the worst thing for them, especially, and this is going to sound condescending and I don't mean it to be, but like especially for like a cis white dude, um it's not the worst thing for him to be the only cis white dude in a
Right.
space.
And
Like,
to
Probably
be
great.
in a
that's kind of
space
cool.
where he is not centered.
Correct. Like, and
Can
we're
it?
not trying to torment him. He's just as
Well, he
we're
can
just as,
learn.
yeah, and we're just as nice to him as we are to everybody else. But like but he can tell, he knows, and we're like,
Right.
welcome to the welcome to our nightmare. This is what it's, but it's not a nightmare, but the opposite. But like we're like, yep, that's how it is, but not in a vindictive way. Just
Mhm.
like so I really think that's a valuable opportunity for the dudes who join us as well.
Yeah. Men can evolve too.
Yes.
We all
Yes.
can. We all can. We all
Yeah.
can, except that one guy.
Yeah. Raquel's friends with him, that one guy.
Mm, mm, no.
Thank you so much for being on. This was really fun.
Yes.
You're
Thank you
very
so
welcome.
much,
Thank you
Lynn.
for having me.
Absolutely. It was our pleasure.
All right. See you soon.
Okay.
Thanks. You want to recap?
Yeah. Okay. So a couple things. One, of course, it's important that more spaces open up to have more women and more people from marginalized communities.
The other
Absolutely.
others.
The other others, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, comedy, absolutely. In all of the ways, the writers' rooms, the actual comics, the people writing movies, people writing pilots, like all of the things. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm here for it. Yes. Thank you. And creating community. I think that is fantastic. But the other thing that comes up for me is, especially in times where the world is a burning dumpster fire, it is so important to also present, hey, but guess what? There's still joy in the world,
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
And I just think, I think that is so thoroughly important that, you know what? Yeah, find your joy wherever you can get it. If that's the world sucks right now, and yes, I know I need to go and I need to volunteer and protest and do all of these things, but guess what? I also need to find some joy for myself, and oh, let me take this class where I can learn how to do stand up, or I can learn how to write my story in a way that'll make it a little more palatable for other people and maybe find the joy in my story. So, hey, there's this other thing. So it's so, I just think that it's just such an important thing that Lynn and Gold Comedy are doing. I just think it's so important.
It is. Agreed.
Yeah.
Couple things I wanted to talk about. I'm glad that Lynn took the time to, like, right there at the end, to talk about bro culture, because
Mhm.
it wasn't exactly what I was thinking. There's some stuff on her website, and I only wrote a couple that stuck out to me. But the first
Mhm.
is that all 5 major late night hosts are cis white men still.
Yeah. Mhm.
Amy Schumer is the only woman to make the Forbes 100 list of top earning comedians. The only woman.
The only one, and that is,
It's a list of 100 people.
and they, yeah, yeah, which is,
Women are 50%. I think women are 51% of the population,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So we're a little off here in representation. So this work is super important. And laughter probably is one of the best medicines. I remember when my ex-husband and I, we lost our first child, as a lot of people know. We went to see a movie, Adam Sandler, a couple days after, at the movie theater,
Mhm.
Waterboy. I only
Mm.
remember because we laughed. And
Yeah.
it's not like Waterboy was this like work of art or anything, but we laughed. And that
Yeah.
laughter, like, it released. Yes, this was one of the most tragic things that ever happened to me in my entire life.
Mhm.
And yet here we were in a theater a couple days later, our bodies were laughing. They were like
Yeah.
releasing some of this tension and this emotion and this, and I'm I'll always be a little thankful to Adam Sandler for that,
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
for making me laugh,
Yeah.
because laughter is healing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to be able to, like, laugh at ourselves, that changes everything. And
Mhm.
to laugh about, in some ways, we kind of have to laugh about the ridiculousness of this Trump 2.0. The
Yeah.
shit that's happening is fucking ridiculous.
Right. Right.
We have to laugh in some, oh my God, it's so tragic and it hurts so much. And
Yeah.
yet we also have to laugh a little.
Right. Yeah, I just sort of my own personal story. My mom's sister Catherine, my mom and my aunt Catherine were really, really close. And my aunt Catherine passed several years ago, several years ago. But I remember being so worried about my mom. So worried about my mom. And how she was going to make it through and if she was going to be okay. And at my aunt's funeral, I was sitting there with my mom, holding my mom's hand. And one of the things a memory that came to me of my Aunt Catherine was that she really liked to sing. She couldn't sing. She didn't have a good singing voice, but I loved it. Like, it always just made me smile. Like, not like I was laughing at her. It was just like, she's having a good time. This is awesome. I love it. You keep doing it, right? And so at the funeral, people were singing and doing all the things, and I looked over at my mom and I said, I just had this image of Aunt Catherine singing that song, and I was like, didn't necessarily sound as good as the lady up there, but it made me laugh. And my mom laughed a little bit, and I was like, my mom's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
My mom can still feel joy. My mom is gonna be okay. Right?
So important.
And I think, and that's one of the things that we have to hold on to, is that yes, there's so much that just is awful right now. And I mean, you can say that probably about every time in history, but if you can still feel joy, you are still alive. You have not been destroyed, because you can still experience joy. And
Yep.
that's key. Man. Wow. Who knew comedy was such a big thing. I love it.
Same. Thanks, Raquel.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend.
Or you could leave us a comment and a 5-star review, or email us at madnesscafepodcast@gmail.com.
Thanks, everybody.